Welcome to the Talent Culture Podcast. Learn how the most innovative companies implement culture and make it part of their strategy. On the Talent Culture Podcast, we're interviewing business professionals on how they prioritize onboarding and culture, bringing our own expertise and experience from working with dozens of companies on exactly this. The Talent Culture Podcast is an actionable strategy guide that can either help you implement these strategies in your company or learn how you get buy-in from executives. Your host is Søren Bolvig, CEO at Empact. Enjoy.
Today we're going to talk about onboarding because it is important. We see that up to 70% stay longer in the company if they have a good quality onboarding up till actually 3 years extra. We see that the cost of shifting employees can vary from, depending if we're talking deskless workers, from 20,000 DKK to 200,000 DKK. So having people longer to stay longer is cost effective. But I think the most important part of it is that people actually get up to speed much faster, meaning they get productive in a much shorter time frame. There are some challenges with onboarding the deskless workers. One of them is, of course, they are difficult to reach. They don't necessarily have a company phone, they don't have a company email, they don't have a laptop or whatever, so it can be difficult to reach them. There's a high churn among deskless workers. We see in some companies up to 60-70% churn. So it is difficult to reach them. Their sense of belonging sometimes is very low because they are, in a way, you could say, disconnected from the rest of the workforce. Another challenge for connecting with the deskless workers is that they are spending most of the time facing customers and having less time actually reading, go through, or having access to information that would lead to a better onboarding. So it's actually difficult for them to access information. They don't have time, for example, if they work in a store, to go into the back room, look at a computer, maybe take a test and so on. That is super difficult for them, and they don't do it. So we somehow need to, in order to make onboarding work better, we need to adapt our communication to the world they live in. And most of them have a smartphone and they use app. So it's important that the onboarding actually happens in that environment and uses gamifications, uses videos, and making it more interesting for each employees to engage with the content they need to be onboarded. That also means that it has to be connected to the daily work in form of, for example, quizzes, two minutes quiz on a topic. They understand it, they take off, and then they got knowledge in. And then you can test them again, maybe the day after or the day after again. So it becomes like it is a part of their job where onboarding happens. So the onboarding doesn't need to happen disconnected from the daily work. It has to be integrated to the daily work in order to be more efficient and actually have a higher impact on the whole process. When doing the onboarding, I think it's, as told, I think it's necessary to use media that the target group is familiarized with. Meaning, for example, if the younger groups look a lot of TikTok or Instagram or whatever, see a lot of videos, reels or whatever it may be, the onboarding then would have higher success if it also is constructed by video. So instead of having a lot to read and maybe some tests to take, they see a short video with the right statements in it or the knowledge they need to learn, and then they may take a test afterwards. Or we may use gamification in form of, challenge your colleagues or whatever it may be on the topics that are necessary. For example, if you are working in it could be topics like security around certain areas within oil plants or whatever it may be. You need to learn about that. How do you behave in case of accident and so on? Then you maybe see a video and then take a small test, or you may also challenge your colleagues with who did understand the content of video best. So I think we see that work. We see that people tend to engage in content and tend to engage in this onboarding material when it becomes social relevant, meaning that if you use the material to, for example, challenge your colleagues, or you talk with your colleagues about what you have experienced and what you have learned. The onboarding needs to happen in some sort of automated flow. So, for example, if you imagine that you set up a flow consisting of content elements for the next, 90 days or 14 days or whatever it may be, and then the new employee get exposed for the content. For example, within a week, they get exposed for this content, this video, this test, they need to do this exercise, and then 1 week later, they get exposed for a new one. And all of it can happen automatically within an onboarding system. So I think that would be the correct way to do it from a most efficient point of view. And I think when you then do the onboarding, it's important that you then use the media, as we talked about, using the apps, using the notification. Now you need to do this, using, the ease of use, taking a test where you need to answer maybe 4 or 5 questions, multiple choice questions. So it has to become as easy for the employees as possible. They should more or less not see it as an onboarding exercise, but just see it as part of the daily work. If you have it automated, then you can make sure that the content will stay the same and not vary from person to person. But at the same time, you can also have more targeted onboarding. So like the people maybe working in a store in the grocery department are getting this content. The people working in the bakeries or the butcher department are getting this content. So I think it's important that it gets relevant as possible and at the same time integrated into the daily work. So it just becomes like a seamless exercise they do, and they consume knowledge without actually knowing it. Maybe one of the most important things in the onboarding, but that's not only connected to the onboarding, is how do you make deskless workers feel less disconnected and hence more engaged in the company. The challenge is to be able to communicate with them and adapt the communication in a way that they feel they are seen, and also possibility to give feedback so they're seen and heard, and then they start feeling connected. And I think it's about how do you engage with them. And I honestly think we see that most of them use their cell phones. It is their daily communication tool with their friends, with their social life, everything. And that's where you also need to reach them with your corporate communication, your corporate onboarding process, and whatever. That it has to be on that media, and you have to use the media like videos and games and so on that they're used to use. If you manage to establish a communication thread with them, they will start feel connected with the company, and they will also be more likely to consume information that you send out. The whole onboarding process is the company not only to make sure that the employees get up to speed faster and they don't churn as fast as if not had an onboarding. I think the onboarding is the first communication path that you establish with the employee. So that's where you need to make the connection. That's where you need to make sure that you start creating this emotional bond with the employees. And that's why the onboarding becomes so important, because that's where you start making the bond. It's not only to make sure they understand the job, but it's also trying to connect and engage the employees and make them see they're part of a bigger picture than just standing at a desk somewhere.
This was the Talent Culture Podcast. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next episode.